All right. Good morning and welcome everybody. We're jumping back into a musing. I don't know why. I mean, I spent a lot of time kind of doing that, like explaining, introducing things when a lot of people aren't going to see these until much later. But currently, what's going on is I'm doing a bunch of Bloodborne videos. Borderlands is also a very great gaming franchise, one of my favorites. But Bloodborne is just such a great game, and I don't know. For those that don't get it. I think it's more like anybody who's had any like nightmares or fears or stuff, and you're basically conquering your biggest nightmares and these evil monsters and creatures and things, and overcoming, yeah, basically nightmares. So, anyways, they're doing a revival, and I don't even know like what the deal is with it. Like, I mean, I just recently found out that You're in the Know, right, was actually in the game a long time ago. I thought that was a new thing that they just added to like celebrate this kind of thing. And also, while I'm thinking of it, let's go ahead and chop these trees down. I just wanted to use this to get a bunch of fuel, but it does block the view of this temple. And I'm making this temple in remembrance of. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still going to add some trees in here. I think we can beautify it on the inside. But this temple is actually like an ofrenda for Dia de los Muertos, for those that celebrate the Day of the Dead in Spanish, some Spanish cultures, not all. In fact, it's you can't just generalize, because I remember my Spanish teacher back in high school telling us about when she was traveling through South America. She was in one country where the I got your nose symbol was a symbol for good luck. And so for those that don't know, I think it's B in sign language or something. It's a letter in sign language, but it's where you stick your thumb between your first and middle fingers and you have a fist. It means good luck in one of the countries down there. It also means F you in the next country over. And my Spanish teacher thought it was funny but interesting, and just how you got to be careful with every culture you go to. And whether or not the story is true or not, doesn't even matter. It was funny, but I don't think she would like make up a story like that. But it's just people's cultures, and really, like, I mean, everybody knows deep down that, you know, a certain point that we're not out to try to get each other, but it's hard. I mean, and when you're dealing with communication that might not be exact, might be missing something, or there might be some things lost in communication, you just got to be careful and have an open mind, and just know that people are people, no matter where they come from. Everybody is similar to a point where we're out there trying our best to live life, enjoy life, and make it to where as many other peoples can enjoy life. That's it. That's human nature. And that's why religion and politics, they often get confused, and people get angry around them, because at the end of the day, like, oh, we don't have a perfect solution for this, or what are you doing, and you get paid good money to do this. And yes, all of these knee-jerk reactions to these politicians, but it's not that easy. You can't just go in there and shake things up and completely redo how we do things. It has to be a process, and I don't know. And it's hard because especially with American politics, which is just the worst, like, it is such a show and so much razzle dazzle that in order to get votes, people will stretch the truth. They'll scare you. They'll be like, well, this is what they want to do. This is your future if you vote for this person. It's like, no, wow. Like, it's. So, anyways, we need to work on clarifying that. And there are many efforts to do just that. So, it all comes down to communication. But I just wanted to jump on and kind of catch up with a few of the plans that I think are the most important that we need to be focusing on. And so that is housing, um, good working conditions, stuff like that. Specifically housing. Now, and I don't understand why we don't have things already in place. We've got trailer parks, but then like the more that I talk to people that live in and I used to rent a trailer in a trailer park that was really supposed to be more for like a retirement community, but they let me in because I was, I don't know, but like I met with the person, like it was agreed, like, and I kept to myself, like, I tried to stay quiet and like keep, be peaceful to my neighbors and be conscious about, what my actions did. Like if I threw a party or something, like I might be upsetting some elderly people nearby. And that's another thing too, is, we need to make just life cheaper all around. So, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of ways that we can make things better, but the biggest thing is organization and communication. And it's hard because you don't want to like try to start a cult, but at the same time, it needs people to band together and to work towards common goals peacefully without too much division within the ranks themselves. And it's just hard to do, and a lot of that stems from politics and religion um, just being misinterpreted, misconstrued. I mean, at the end of the day, and I keep talking about this in these musings, but the Putin interview. Now, no, whatever, and actually it was embarrassing. I thought that there was tech that was translating in real time, and then someone pointed out to me, it's like, no, I think they just have a translator, an interpreter. That way they can translate what's being said and then add the little subtle nuances, like, because if you just translate just across the board what a word means per word, you're not going to get the full meaning of that word or that sentence. You're going to get, you know, you're going to miss out on the slang, the jokes, the little pieces of communication that we can often overlook. And a lot of that is nonverbal communication. Like when you're just dealing with emails, it's hard to kind of get a setting of the tone of people, stuff like that. And I don't know. It's just, yeah. And and I'm dealing with something right now that I need to figure out because I had an old friend reach out that I still consider him a friend. It's just he's very, very liberal, like aggressively liberal, and that just doesn't fly in Colorado because we're a very purple state. We're a bunch of Republicans and Democrats, and really just a bunch of good old people that we like to think that we're forward thinking. We have a lot of great advancements, but at the same time, there's pockets of Colorado that like a bunch of ranchers and farmers, and I used to live in a small mountain community of Buena Vista where you're kind of cut off from the rest of the world. And a lot of the problems, I guess, is the big thing to point out, like transgenderism, stuff like that, even LGBTQ in general. Like there's just not a lot of it, so there's not as much of a focus in small mountain towns. But I mean, it's not that people want to oppress or make people feel bad or guilty or suicidal or any of that. It's just not on their radar. Like they're not aware that that's a thing. And then when they see these things, like, and I'm sorry, like social media is not great for painting fair pictures of people, places, and situations. So what gets magnified is what politicians use for their campaign. Be like, well, look at this madness, like this, this wokeness, this, that, and like, but then when you really look at it, and you're just like, oh, this person's just trying to be happy. Like, this is a new concept that, up until recently wasn't even a thing. And again, I always deflect back to South Park because South Park, I mean, at the end of the day, it is just a comedy show, but at the same time, they address a bunch of issues and they try to, well, A, make a joke of it, and B, try to paint it in a light to where it's a little easier for people to understand because at face value, a lot of that stuff sounds crazy. Same with, you know, if you take things out of context, like Trump wants to bring back the firing squad for drug dealers. Like, okay, well, there is a lot of pushback about, well, drug dealing just because of the fentanyl crisis, and people think that there's a bunch of evil, nefarious people out there trying to kill people. But then we have these sources, and that's what I really hate, this disconnect. The Sackler family, the OxyContin, like, moguls, like, the people that, they actually did some really bad stuff, like, tried to get people to say that it was a non-addictive medication for pain killing, like, this wonder drug that it's not habit forming. And it is indeed 100% addictive and habit forming. It is a strong opiate that human beings are easily addicted to. And I don't hear anybody calling for the death of the Sackler family. Not that I encourage death at all. I don't think an eye for an eye, I think that leaves the whole world blind. That whole, I think it's Gandhi that said that, or it doesn't matter. Could have been some random musician. Like, the point is, tit for tat or an eye for an eye, like, just getting revenge for whatever. Well, and it is often misguided, like misunderstandings, miscommunications, so where the punishment doesn't really fit the crime, and you actually do a little overkill, and then you end up like wronging somebody trying to write something. I don't know. It's kind of a vague generalization, but what we can do, what we can control, what we can, as a common person can focus on, is banding together and forming groups for affordable housing. Now, what does that look like? Um, well, really, alcohol is one of the biggest factors to why life sucks when you're poor. It doesn't fix the problem, it makes you forget about the problems, and then it makes you susceptible to possibly wronging other people in a lot of ways. Like, Mm. Oh crud, I don't have my water, but that's okay. I got to get to work soon, so this might be a bit of a shorter. Oh, hold on. Musing anyway. I might just grab some water. Actually, hold on. Let me grab some water. I can't. While I was talking. Okay, sorry about that. Ugh, when you talk a lot, your mouth gets, your throat gets dry, and then you need water. So, anyways, the things that we can be doing are focusing on is making it to where there are options for people that don't have a lot of money. And they have to be respectable options. Like the current options are, oh, get a roommate. You know, well, what if you have kids? Or what if you're a single parent? Or what if you only, I mean, like my situation, I can't have a roommate because I have kids for half of the week. Like, that would just be really hard. Or, I mean, not that I can't, it's just that that is a really undesirable living situation, especially now that I'm older, less rambunctious and reckless. Like, you know, once you hit your 30s and your brain is actually fully developed, your prefrontal cortex is fully developed, you tend to live less risky, and that's taken into consideration because if you're a 20 something, then there's a chance that you'll be out partying and like maybe doing illegal drugs or like, you know, maybe doing dangerous things, driving sporadically. And that's the kind of living that people are trying to clamp down on, but it actually affects everybody. So I guess my idea of like potential solutions are, you know, buying some land, building a bunch of tiny homes and making like little trailer parks, but then changing the way that the trailer parks work. Because as it is, people pay lot fees, which are basically like an HOA. And I don't know. I feel like there's something about that. Like we really need to restrict the fees and fines and stuff because at the end of the day, they're living in like, you know, a tiny house that, you know, I think you should just be charged the bare minimum. Like what does it cost for like water, sewer, stuff like that? You know, and then are there ways to where maybe they can work, contribute, and like offset some of those costs? And it shouldn't be that expensive. And as we continue to like narrow down on technologies that reduce our energy consumption in the first place, and then just kind of reduce the cost of living all around. I mean, and then there's living, and then there's living lavishly, and like, and that's one another problem that I'm dealing with is someone I know that they just absolutely refuse to pack their own lunch or to you know to take care of their own needs that way. The only way that they know how to do that is to go out to eat every day, and it's like, wow, that's extremely wasteful and you know pretty offensive to me because there's people out there that can barely afford to like eat at all and like they're like starving. And you're out here spending all this money on a bunch of and especially when it's all a bunch of to-go stuff because that I feel like we really need to address that. And as somebody that worked at Subway for a good 5 years during college, like when I was an assistant manager, offered my own store as a manager if I wanted to, and all that good stuff. And yeah, 5 years of hard work got me pretty much where I could live somewhat comfortably. But it does take work, and I think that's the miscommunication a lot of people don't understand when they're young, and their brains aren't fully developed. So again, we go back to that. Like you cannot make your best decisions until you're 30 or your mid 30s, even I'd say, because like I was still making some dumb decisions, and you're still going to. I mean, that's dependent on a whole bunch of other factors like did you have enough to eat that day or like are you hydrated, like is your body actually functioning in a way that's conducive to smart choices or smart decisions. I mean, and if you're not presented with all the facts or if you're presented with so many skewed facts. One of my exes used to say the spin, and she used to talk about the spin that politicians put on things. Like they can twist and distort reality. And I guess the hardest thing is to realize that both political parties here in America do it. It's not that just the Republicans or just the Democrats. Like everybody is guilty of it because they're trying to run a campaign. They're trying to sell themselves to you and their ideas and what they're going to do and all the change that they're going to do. But their hands are tied to the party. So, and that it's in the process of changing. We're finally figuring that out. And the first step is just communicating the problem. Like if you don't know that there's a problem, then how are you going to fix said problems, you know? And problems for who too? I guess I should also clarify that because like for some people, yeah, the way things are going has worked totally fine. Like that, I don't see a problem. My life is fine. Why should I care? You know, and that's a big sentiment that, and it's hard to think of other people past yourself, especially because it is hard to do that. Like if you're living comfortably and all that, you're doing something. You're working or your family worked and you're riding the coattails of your family's work or something. That's why I have a lot of lack of empathy and sympathy for wealthy families like the Trumps and the Bidens and Kamala Harris. Like, I mean, yeah, she's cute on paper and she's a great leader and this and that, but she was the judge for or the district attorney or something that like handed down punishments for weed. Like, you know, she is one of the people that is the problem of the older generation. Like, you know, you're causing all these problems for what? To create job creation so people can work in prisons and jails and then, you know, watch these people and treat them like children because they decided to put something in their bodies that wasn't completely legal. Like, and now it is. And so that's the thing is like now as we start recognizing this, we need to retroactively fix these problems. And we're doing that too. It's not like there's nothing going on. But like even in my own family's experience, I had a family member that worked for the boot camp in Buena Vista for Department of Corrections, Chaffee County, which was basically a medium security facility, a prison that housed a bunch of inmates and people that had made poor choices or whatever, and for whatever reason too. Like you notice that the wealthy people, they're probably still making the same poor choices, but they don't have the same backlash. And my biggest example is Hunter Biden and President Biden, and how Hunter on camera was in possession of a large amount of crack cocaine. A large amount, like about like I don't know, 8 ball, quarter ounce or something, which according to President Biden in his younger years, and there's a video of him saying, bragging actually, that he helped pass a bill that would get somebody that was caught with a quarter-sized amount of crack cocaine 5 years in prison. That's 5 birthdays, 5 Christmases, 5 Easters, or 5 Ramadans, whatever holidays you celebrate. That's 5 of them that you sit in a cell. You have to live with a bunch of other people that are just having a miserable time, possibly dangerous, and you might have to click up in a prison gang just to stay safe. Or even if you don't really have to, you might think you have to and do it anyway. It's real or perceived, projected or well, because perception is reality. First of all, I mean that's a thing. My dad used to say that all the time. He had a Zippo that even said it. Perception is reality. So life is what you make it, which is what the Joe Dirt movie, you know, has a profound thing. Although there was like, oh, you like to see homos naked? He's like, no, home is where you make it. And it's kind of one of the jokes. It's funny, but anyways, you know, it's all about perspective. And what we need to do, the thinkers, the scientists, the people, the leaders, like what we need to do. And I've been kind of just coining a group, the Illuminati, and spelling it like naughty, like, oh, you're a bad kid, like, and not like that. It's like, usually say like a naughty kid, but then like it gets kind of construed like, then it becomes like a sexual thing when you're more adults, like you've been naughty and the spankings and things that I never really understood, but you know, some people are into that, but, and we do need to keep that separate. And I guess as I say these things, one thing I will never be okay with is pedophilia. Like, I mean, I've been hearing rumbles that that's becoming more okay. Now, it's not a death sentence, but at the same time, it should never happen. And that's why, like, I follow this one account on the X app um, that she's constantly shaming all these pedophiles and people caught for assaulting a child or an underage person. And there's different, like, areas, too. Like, sex crimes. If it's actually happening on, like, a child, like, yeah, that's way worse. I mean, it's still bad if it's someone underage. And honestly, like, I'd almost argue that real adults aren't until you're about 30. I mean, if we were really going to go down that road. But, I don't know. Like, it's hard. Like, you can't. And then try to tell a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds that, no, you can't vote. You can't do any of this. Like, you don't have a say. You're going to get hit with a lot of backlash because that's basically saying, I don't trust you to be an adult. You're still a child or a young adult, you know, and some people make that distinction. Oh, anyway, sorry, just to close the loop at that other point, most sex offenders, especially on like children, small children, end up being either law enforcement or in a church or like it's staggering how much the stats are on that. Like, I mean, and there still are. I mean, that doesn't mean that there is no chance that someone, I don't know. People can do evil things all the time if not checked. And I think we need to come together as a society and basically stamp that out. And my solution is to legalize adult sex work. Like, I think if you took away the barriers for people to get their needs met, then they wouldn't go and reach out to these extremes. Like, that's just what I've seen. Having a lot of friends and family that work in law enforcement and corrections, and just talking with them, just being like, this is what I think. And of course, there's still some people, myself included, that at times would get so mad and be like, oh, they need to be castrated, or just the crud kicked out of them. They need to get physically assaulted, and that still does happen. Like they get bullied, they get harassed, and not by me. I mean, I've not because I didn't want to, but it's because I didn't want to be in any more trouble than I already was. So I was like, I disliked them, but I wasn't about to do anything about it. Except for to try to protect it from happening in the first place. Preventative law enforcement, preventative maintenance, preventative corrections. Like correcting bad behavior before it becomes a problem, not after, not reactionary. And that's what, unfortunately, we find ourselves a lot in, is that situation of reaction. Like we can only react to these situations, be like, oh no, the child was molested and they're possibly scarred and they're probably going to need some therapy and counseling now. And there's really not much you can do once it's already happened. You're just in damage control mode. Now, to prevent it from happening, we need to do a lot of things, and we need to clear the air on a lot of situations too. Like, understand that just because you're a Republican or just because you're a Democrat does not mean that you advocate and abide by all these ridiculous things that these politicians are saying or doing. And especially when things come out like President Biden's first course of action should have been to roll back the war on drugs and decriminalize a lot of drugs, like, or at least make it to where people get treatment if they have a substance abuse problem. Now, there's a difference between substance use and substance abuse, and actually, we're already almost at that 30-minute mark, and I've just been or no, sorry, looking at the time, I might be going a few minutes over into my work day. Well, it's okay, I'll stay late for like the 5 minutes, but just substances, because as is, if you get caught using an illegal substance, you get put in jail. Or if you get caught, like, I mean, if you, usually it's like traffic stops. I mean, then they like, oh, well, you seem to be impaired, and then one thing leads to another. Next thing you know, they're searching your car, and whether or not it was a problem or posing a risk to public safety, now they're all up in your business, and they're finding things like, oh, you're spending the night in jail. You're going to need to leave your car on the side of the road where anybody can get to it, which is a risky situation, and and it's on you to communicate to somebody, like, and at the same time, you're in fight or flight mode, like, because you're being arrested, you're being put in handcuffs, you're being restrained, like, now you're being treated as a criminal, like, and all these things go through your mind, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, all I wanted to do was just make it home to where I could go use my substances or party in safety, or whatever the case may be. I mean, and you might not even be impaired at the time, but if they have probable cause and they search your car and they find something, and a lot of times, people keep the stuff in their cars because it's not safe to have in their house because of roommates or family or whatever. And then it's more of a generation thing where all substances are just the pure devil and they need to be stamped out, all because Reagan did the Just Say No campaign and really ramped up the war on drugs. Because of why? Because he goofed. His administration goofed. His own problem. Rather than admit fault and be like, you know what? I apologize, because he would have gone to jail or something. You admit, if you admit wrongdoing, whether you, oh, shoot. Hold on. Sorry, this is important. It's a message from my co-parent. Hmm. I think it's just reminding me that I get them today because we made an agreement, and that's important too. So, like, for the people out there that have kiddos, you need to work with your co-parent, no matter what the situation looks like. Actually, yeah. Let's see. So I'll pick them up. Sorry. Okay, sorry, because we're also trying to set up play dates with our kiddos, and we need to be in communication with other parents and stuff. Okay, cool. Anyways, And that's just the thing. And it takes a lot of maturity, and I admit I was not the best in the beginning. Like, wait, what? Sorry, I just got a. What is this? I just heard a little ding, like, that I have something going on. I don't have a meeting right now, do I? Did someone put something on my calendar? Oh, okay, no. It's just a couple reminders I put myself to make sure I did some work. But anyways, yeah, it's just it takes a lot, and I had to see a mediator. We went to family court and all this stuff, and at first I was just angry because I was paying a bunch of child support. I had finally gotten a good job. You know, I was making about 50,000, but 1,000 was going to pay for my kids, which very realistic. Like kids are expensive, but it was because the courts were telling me I had to. Now, if it was up to me and it was just like, okay, I probably would have given more or less. I don't know, but my co-parent had to be sure that she was at least going to be able to provide for those kids, and I was making. Anyways, it all comes down to that. But the way that the courts work could use some work too. Like they need to take into account some other factors and stuff, and they are. They're constantly improving their processes. And it requires a lot of patience on people's part, which isn't always easy, especially when, yeah, when there's issues. And anyways, for right now, in fact, I'm open. There's the alarm for me to hop off of here, but um, I'm going to keep putting together things and really affordable housing, and if you improve people's lives to where the poorest person in the country should be able to live comfortably if they're working. I mean, everybody should be able to work a job. I think that's the biggest thing is like, you know, and that friend that I'm about to reach out to here in a little bit, I, the thing that bothered me is he would just bail on jobs, and that was offensive to me who didn't bail on jobs. I worked a lot of jobs, and every time I wanted to quit somewhere, I gave my 2 weeks notice. I tried to make it work, like, you know, and I didn't just do the cancel culture thing. And it's easier for some people to do that, especially people that come from a city, because if you bail, you're like, "Pff, there's a chance that the next person that hires me will have no idea." But I came from a small town to where if you did that to somebody, the entire town would know you bailed, and then the entire town would probably not want to hire you because what does that say? Like, well, if they've done it once, they might do it again. Like, you know, and at the end of the day, hiring managers, and I've had supervisor and manager training and such, at the end of the day, you're just trying to get a job done, and you're trying to help other people get their jobs done, and then you have to meet goals and requirements and stuff. Now, it takes direction, it takes guidance, and that was actually lacking in that one job that I had that was paying, yeah, 50,000 right out of college. It was a good job for that, but the training was atrocious. Like there was just a huge lack of training, and there was just constantly like changing and growing, and I don't know, but like and they've since improved that too. Like my biggest thing with them was I was hired as a software developer and I was doing IT work. That was my main job function, was to do IT troubleshooting. And if they just would have told me that in the beginning, I think I would have done a much better job and been like, "Oh, that's my job, that's my role." But I thought I was going to be the next Zuckerberg and make the next greatest thing, when in reality they had a bunch of developers from China that actually wrote the code. And then, yeah, so I don't know. It's tough. And part of that is just, well, part of that is solving all of these problems. And once we start solving a bunch of these problems, and not like we haven't started already, it's a constant cycle. We're constantly improving. So we need to give each other patience. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're moving forward and we're actually fixing things and not going backwards. Anyways, I'm gonna get to work. I gotta do some things. So ta-ta for now. I will see you in the next one.